Hi, everybody. It's Paula. This is the Common Book Show, and I am going to read something of my own today because the stuff that I've been reading and listening to is too highfalutin for me to understand that well, so I'm not going to be able to make you understand it, no matter how I use inflection. Oh, yes, that's right. We are here. I'm sorry. We were talking already. So Richard's here, and Nessa's here, and my son Tom's on drums. Okay, thank you, Tom, for reminding me, because, I'm not exactly, I'm not real professional about this. I enjoy it a lot, but so I'm reading something that I wrote about labor unions when there were some problems with people. Well, there's still problems with people not believing in labor unions, and I don't understand it because people have very short memories. So I wrote this a while ago, and I think I submitted it to the paper, but I don't think they ever printed it. So my stepfather John once told me about coal mines before the unions. Men were no better than slaves, sucking in coal dust for 12 hours a day, only to owe the company store more money than they ultimately made. Inflated prices were common because the owners monopolized the store. In a little town that grows around a coal mine, where else do you get your flour, butter, eggs? There was no town except the coal town and no law except the coal town laws. But we didn't know we were poor, John said, because all our neighbors were coal miners in the same boat. This was a time before television could show a poor man how a rich man lived. A visit to a neighboring town was usually more of the same, a coal town with a coal town reality. They knew nothing else, and the coal boss knew that and needed to perpetuate the ignorance. John was a little boy when the labor organizers rode into town. They fought for a decent life for men, shorter hours, medical attention, better pay, and freedom from the short and harsh life they had come to know. John watched as the strikebreakers came in on horseback and beat the organizers to death to protect the coal boss's world. They did not want to give up 1 cent to these moles that lived in the mines, that were not as human as they, who wouldn't know what to do with money if they had it, and who were willing to work for nothing because they were hungry and their children were hungry. The unions kept coming in and making the miners understand that there could be a better way, a fairer way, because the coal boss needed them to pull the coal from the earth. Without the miners, there would be no more wealth, no more success. The miners rallied and withheld their labor. The machine came to a halt. The coal boss had to make concessions, but made them not because it was the right thing to do, but because they needed to keep the mines open for the sake of their own fortunes. This is how it works. Those on top will usually only share if there is no alternative. Those people who control the wealth feel superior to labor and do not feel guilty about exploitation. Workers are expendable in a poor economy, and if one will not dance until he dies, there are 200 other hungry men who are in line to take their place. Now the unions fall in Wisconsin, and the corporations are once again feeding on the weak. They look for employees who will sacrifice their lives for bread, for without bread there is no life. Everyone forgets about the coal miners before the unions. Even common men speak out against organized labor because they are coerced into thinking that the union workers are somehow cheating the common men out of money that is rightfully theirs. Don't they know that the only reason there are luxuries like a 5-day work week, 8-hour work days, and laws providing for breaks in the day for meals were initially provided by organized labor? We need to remember the 6-day work week, the 12-hour work day, and everything else that existed in the early days of the 20th century. Remember, because if we forget, we are sure to be heading back there. Now that the workers in third world countries are becoming enlightened about their own rights and jobs, the jobs are coming back. We are now the ones who are in such dire straits that we are willing to sell our souls for bread. If we let those who control the production call the shots, we will again understand why labor had to organize. Be wary and wise.
Very topical.
Well, we're having they're still dumb. People are dumb. I'm getting sick of dumb people. I'm getting
In the news, are you still on your ban from watching the news?
I peek at it like a train wreck. Like I'll put it on for a few minutes, and then if I can handle it, I'll keep it on. But I really haven't been watching much news. Why? What happened?
Vanessa, are you familiar with the latest news story about U.S. Steel and Nippon Steel?
No.
Okay. So Nippon Steel is from Japan,
Yeah.
obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Biden intervened when Nippon Steel asked if it could buy U.S. Steel. And Biden said, no way.
Yeah.
And the reason, well, I suspect that the reason that Biden did it is because the labor union at U.S. Steel said, if you let the Japanese buy U.S. Steel, they are going to hire people who are not in the labor union. I don't know how they know this, but that's what they said. Now, what was interesting about this whole thing, first of all, there's 14,000 people working for U.S. Steel in 2025.
Okay.
How many people were working there at its peak?
Oh. Said 14,000 now?
Yeah.
I would say that there were probably double shifts, like there were night and day shifts. I mean, I don't know, 50,000 people?
What would you say, Vanessa? How many people worked at U.S. Steel in its peak?
Probably 150,000.
340,000.
Wow.
That was quite a workforce. Holy cow. And so they're down to 14,000. Now, the board of directors of U.S. Steel and the board of directors at Nippon Steel are saying to the press, what a foolish thing to put the kibosh on this takeover. We're going to take it to court. And the argument from U.S. Steel is, we have to upgrade our facility to stay competitive with the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
The cost of that is $2.7 billion.
Oh.
We don't have it, but the Japanese do. But they said, we're not putting the money in unless we control the company. So we're willing to let them do that. What is not being said, though, is the wealth of the of the U.S. Steel people who are invested in that company. It's going to go up if the Japanese buy it.
And are they, I mean, if the Japanese own a steel company in this country, aren't they required to follow the rules of labor rules of this country?
That's a good question. I mean, that's what I thought. So, like, why is the union worried?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I'm sure that there's so many Japanese automobile companies in the United States. I mean, they build Hondas here, they build Toyotas here. It'd be an easy thing to research.
Mm-hmm.
Do they follow the American standard for labor in these plants?
Where did Fred Moore work?
I'm not sure where Fred Moore worked.
Dunlop Tire.
Ah,
Who owns Dunlop Tire?
I don't know that.
Sumitomo Rubber.
Sounds like another Japanese company.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on that?
The first thing I thought of is, like, this is the inadequacy of the American political system.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of it gives the voters this illusion that if only we do this little improvement, then the deficiencies of capitalism won't affect anyone. And it's so weak. You know, like when Trump says, I'm going to forbid that prices in supermarkets are going to go up. You can't do that.
No, you
It's a
can't.
fantasy, you know?
Yeah, and the problem is most people don't understand the workings of capitalism. You
Yeah.
know, and so they think, okay, they're getting, yes, these people are rich, but that means I can get rich too because we have a capitalistic system, and so I can work my way up. But there
Yeah.
is no more work your way up, not like that.
Yeah.
Not like there used to be. Like I mean, there used to be loyalty. I know people in our parents' age would, they would stay at the same company forever because there was a loyalty thing. You know. So they would they'd work from age 20 till they retired in their 60s.
Right.
But that changed sometime in the 80s. I know it was different because right.
Fred Moore worked at that Dunlop tire his whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't tell you. I couldn't have gotten as much money as I was making if I wouldn't have changed jobs. Because I went to my employers and I said, I've been offered a job for X number of dollars. And they said, well, we can't offer you X number of dollars, so you have to move on. I think you're going to need a headset, though. Unless you're just going to watch.
He likes to watch.
Oh,
Is it from
Chauncey Gardner.
Chauncey Gardner?
Really?
That's exactly what I thought
I
of.
hope it's Tim Prey.
So, the 80s. That's when.
So I said to Fred Moore, Fred, what are your thoughts on the latest news story about Dunlop? And we talked about it. And do you know what I'm referring to?
No.
Sumitomo, after I think it was like 20 years, said, we're not making enough money at this thing. We're just closing it down.
So the thing is closed. The factory's closing.
And the bad thing is the way they did it. They did it right around Thanksgiving. And they made the announcement on a Friday, and they said to the workers, don't bother coming in on Monday.
So they don't need to bomb Pearl Harbor anymore. Oh, jeez, that's pretty bad. I think that we made a big mistake when we decided that we weren't going to make things anymore in this country. That was a big mistake. You're right. That's exactly right.
And it's never coming back.
We've never. I know, and it's so
It
sad.
never will, no matter what anyone says.
Well,
It'll never come back here.
they are doing things like those computer chips or whatever you call them, micro blah blah blahs. There are production. They're doing that now here, and I mean that's more skilled labor. But I don't know. I shop at thrift shops and I buy vintage clothing, and you know how I know that it's definitely vintage? If it says it was made in the USA.
Or anywhere but China.
Or anywhere but China. Yeah, you're right about that, Nessa. Because if there's a label that says Hong Kong, that doesn't.
That's 70s.
Nobody buys. Nobody makes clothes in Hong Kong anymore. Or if there's Taiwan, that's another one. Or the Philippines. Then it started. After the 70s, it started going to Mexico, the Philippines, stuff like that. But if I find anything that's not made in China, it's vintage. Everything's made in China now.
I recall.
Supposedly, Gibson Guitars is going to start moving all its manufacturing to Asia.
Really?
They've had a factory either in Kalamazoo, Michigan, or Nashville, Tennessee, forever. And that's why you pay more for a Gibson, as it's made in the United States. Their Asian brand now is Epiphone. So if they move the Gibsons to Asia, they're just going to be more Epiphones, but they're going to put the Gibson brand on it. That's not going to be popular at all because guitarists are really particular. Most of them are really into the whole American-made thing. It's a prestige thing.
It is.
Well, and
There's a brand of guitar called Fender, They were started by a mom and pop type of thing, and then they
Yeah,
sold
Leo
out
Fender.
to a giant corporation. If you can find any of those guitars before they sold to the corporation, the price is like.
Well, I see some of that stuff on Antiques Roadshow when I watch it. You know, like certain years and certain kinds of guitars. You know, they're worth like $25,000. You know,
Yeah.
because they're made differently.
Yeah, here's a little trivia question. I bet you Vanessa knows the answer. So Leo Fender would put a number on every guitar that was made during this mom and pop phase. Who owns guitar number 1? Oh, I thought you would know that right off the top of your head. David
Well, it's guitar
David
number 1.
Yeah, David Gilmour owns the first thing off the Leo Fender
Wow.
thing.
How the hell did he get a hold of guitar number 1?
He
'Cause
probably
the first
bought
guitar
it.
would have been like 1951.
Yep.
Yeah, he bought it. He found it
Bought
somewhere.
it from
It would
somebody.
have to be a
Oh, you know what?
Telecaster.
There's an interesting story about that. A member of the band, a roadie, was feeling very, you could tell he was depressed. And then David Gilmour went up to him and said, "What's the problem?" He said, "I'm screwed. I can't afford my mortgage." And David Gilmour said, "Well, how much is the mortgage? How much you still owe on it?" And the guy told him, and David Gilmour said, "Let me take care of it." He went and he paid off the whole mortgage
Wow.
at the bank, right? And then he said to the roadie, "Just give me $100 a month,"
That's pretty cool.
you know? And the roadie said, "What's the catch?" And he said, "Well, you've always been good to the band, you know, you're here and everything." And the roadie said, "Yeah, but now I'm committed to you for life. I don't want that." And David Gilmour said, "Okay, I'll tell you what. Our agreement will be as long as you work for the band, you give me the $100 a month, and give me that guitar of yours." That was Fender number 1.
Oh, wow.
So now that guitar is worth like $10-20 million.
Wow. Well, I got his house paid off.
Right.
Ay.
I recall in the
James
80s,
has joined us, by the way.
Welcome, James.
Welcome,
you.
James.
I recall in the 80s there was a presidential debate, and the big thing was, it's the economy, stupid.
Yeah.
And Jesse Jackson said, "I just want to do a little bit of audience participation here so that we can kind of understand what our problem is." And he says, "Okay, show of hands in the audience here. How many people know someone who owns a VCR?" And everybody raises their hands. And he says, "Okay, little point of information. All VCRs are made in Asia. None are made in the United States. Next up, how many people here in the audience own or know someone who owns a portable cassette player?" Those are not manufactured in the United States. How many people in the past 5 years have purchased a brand new television or know someone who's purchased a brand new television? Of course, everybody raises their hands, and he says, with Zenith sending all of their jobs to Mexico, we no longer have televisions being manufactured in the United States. One last question. How many people here in the audience own or know someone who owns an intercontinental ballistic missile? Everybody starts laughing. He says, the United States is the largest producer of intercontinental ballistic missiles in the world. So it seems to me the problem is kind of simple. We buy what we don't make. We make what we don't buy.
Oh, my God. That's crazy. Oh, just, I mean, we so the weapons that we're making, these weapons of mass destruction, are not doing anybody any good.
Yeah.
There's no good in that.
Mhm.
You know, they're destructive. They're not for enjoyment or
Yeah.
pleasure or expanding the mind.
Well, on that point of doing no one any good, I think the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds would have a different idea.
Well, yeah. Speaking of things that mind expanding things, I was telling Richard when I first came over today that I've been into Bertrand Russell lately, and I watched some YouTube talks that he gave, and obviously these were talks that were geared for regular people. He's very intelligent. He's got great ideas, but I decided because they have LibriVox, is that what it is, or LibriVox?
I've heard of that. Haven't you heard of that?
They take books that are not in the public domain, and they have readers read the books, and they're free on YouTube. So I decided to look up a book by Bertrand Russell, and it's called The Analysis of Mind. Now, I understand all the words, but the sequencing of the words and the way he's talking about these things is so foreign to me. It's like another language, but I'm listening to it because I'm picking up, I think, enough information about how our mind works that it's beneficial to me. But if anybody wants to blow their own mind, hear words that they know, that they've heard on the street and in regular places, but you can't understand him. It's unbelievable how there's talking about memory and how it intersects with seeing, and how flawed memory is, and how there's no way to measure it, and what the people who are, there's some people who believe that memory has there's no reasoning in there, and it's always factual, but it's not. And I mean, it's just, it's a thesis on the philosophy of the mind. And he's bringing science in, and he's bringing not theology, but he talks a little bit about theology, but he's bringing all these studies in, and it's lectures, and sometimes my brain starts to hurt when I'm listening to it because the language is so dense. But so I'm listening to that, and then I'm also reading Plutarch's Lives, which is very interesting, and I'm learning a lot about Theseus right now and Romulus. But it's also something I couldn't really read from because it's, why do I do this to myself? It's like, I don't know why I do this to myself, but I'm learning stuff. I'm learning stuff, and I'm getting enough out of it that I feel it's worth it. Maybe I should pick up a nice light novel.
A Harlequin romance. Found a bunch of those on a street corner once, a whole box full of them.
Did they have cool covers?
Yeah,
The
some
cover,
of them did.
Yeah, the covers can be really cool with that.
So you found some girly porno stash.
That's what it's kind of like, yeah.
Totally.
But it's, the Harlequin company is here.
Yes.
It's in Cheektowaga.
Right.
And I tried to get, when I was a job coach, I tried to get one of the people that I was supporting in employment, a job shipping books, So I got a little bit of a look at the office, not too much. They'd kicked us out, Gordon.
Before they moved to the location in Cheektowaga, they had a location on Eggert Road by the 33, actually.
Okay. I didn't know about that place. I I saw this place when I was driving to Lancaster one time, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to check them out and see if they'll hire." But
Is there a formula for a Harlequin romance?
oh, there's yeah,
Totally.
there's there's different formulas. You get boy meets girl, they hate each other.
He tames that shrew.
But then then they fall madly in love, and then they have a breakup, and then they get back together, and it's pretty much soap opera-y. They're
So that would be a happy ending. Do most of them have happy endings?
I would say for the
They have
most
to.
part, or if it's an unhappy ending, the guy might die, and then the woman, you see her
Pines for him
riding
ever
off into the sunset. Yeah, exactly, pining away for him for the rest of her life. But most of them have happy endings.
Like a massage parlor.
Very much like a massage. Who's the good one?
I guess I'm assuming because I've never actually read one. Have you?
Who has?
Nessa?
No.
I'm making an assumption. It's like a Hallmark movie, except with a little more sex.
Yeah, baby.
Anybody out there ever read a Harlequin romance? Let's see if we can get
But
some.
Nick has.
I have. My mother
You're
had a
throwing
bunch
down
of
the
them.
gauntlet.
Yeah.
Is there a branch of Harlequin romances that appeal to gay people?
Can't answer
I don't
that.
know.
Because they're into making money. Why wouldn't they have like a section?
Yeah.
You
an
know what?
offshoot.
I
don't know if
I
they
think
do.
you should write them a little letter.
But I would think that gay men are still man enough to want visual more so than auditory. It
Yeah, but
Maybe
reminds
he's talking about lesbians.
They do have. There are porn books, novels. I'm trying
Yeah,
to remember
yeah.
the one that there was one that what was it, like
Bible?
My Little Pony or something. It was really gross. It was animal sex.
But to your point about lesbians, yes, there's been a quite rich amount of lesbian novels and fiction.
Romance stuff, or
Yeah.
yeah, because that's a special genre, that Harlequin thing. It's not really there's no realism. I don't even think anybody reads them before they publish them. They just go.
I think it was funny.
How about The Catcher in the Rye?
Rye whiskey.
Well, Lou, I don't know how that fits into that.
How about the pitcher in the rye? If you have a catcher, you need a pitcher.
Oh, right. Oh, I can see.
Who's the catcher and who's the pitcher?
That's right. Very good, Lou. If that's what you meant. I didn't get it right away. But
And hello, Lou.
so
Vanessa, is there a trans version of romance novels?
I don't know.
Okay.
yeah, I never really. Even love songs. I'm a girl, I know that, but I never really. I used to get sick of. That's why I started liking Steely Dan so much. I don't think they ever wrote a love song, unless you count "Ricky, Don't Lose That Number." But that's not even really a love song.
Right.
How about Hey 19?
Hey 19, it's
Oh,
not.
that's
It's
a
more.
love song if there ever was one.
It's more.
Well,
of
is
a,
that-
That's more of a sex song.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. He's trying to get laid, but I don't think it's. If anybody else can think of a Steely Dan love song, let me know. I know Green Earrings, Mike. Green Earrings, I remember the rings of red design. I remember
Isn't that about a thief?
the look in your eye. I don't mind. I don't know. I don't know if that's about a thief. I kind of
What
thought
a
it
thief
was.
taking and stealing the green earrings. That's what I always got out of it.
Well, I think I thought of it as more of a, something that the guy remembered about the girl. Her green earrings. Maybe it was because they do have a lot of criminal activity songs. Yeah,
Don't take me alive.
yeah.
In Italy, there's a fountain, and it was made famous by the movie Three Coins in the Fountain and then the
Is it
song
the
Three
Trevi?
Coins in the
Is
Fountain.
it the Trevi fountain?
I think it is.
Yeah.
And you face away from the fountain, you throw a coin over your opposite shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
and it means you will come back again and visit Italy.
Mm-hmm.
So they decided this fountain is in really bad repair, and we have to sandblast it. We have to put a new coating on the floor of the fountain because the coins affect, like some stuff comes off of the coins and it stains the,
Yeah, like turns it green or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they finally decided that they were going to do it, and then they started doing it. But in order to do that, you have to drain the fountain.
Mm-hmm.
And if you drain the fountain, the tourists are going to still keep coming.
Oh, and they keep
You don't
throwing.
want them throwing stuff at the workers, right? So somebody in Italy had this brilliant idea. Let's get an old tub, probably something like a bathtub, fill it with water and put it in front of the fountain while we're working on the fountain. And people are throwing coins in the bathtub.
Well, they've lowered their expectations. Oh my God, that's.
It's an appeal to authority.
Are they still repairing it now? Is that,
Yeah, it's still under repair.
That's funny. Yeah, I guess it would be disappointing if you went there looking for the Trevi fountain and it was being repaired.
So, the fountain, the water comes from above and then it goes down this. What's pumping the water? Any idea?
I don't know, elephants.
It's
Aerosmith pump.
it's a Roman aqueduct, which was built in like 50 AD.
Really?
How's that for engineering?
Wow, that's pretty spectacular.
Something lasting 2,000 years, and to this day it's still working?
Well, it would have to be something old because we don't build anything that lasts. They
Yeah.
still haven't ripped up the Autobahn and redone it. So.
I still refuse to buy a refrigerator that will listen to what I'm talking about. I will not. I'll buy a used refrigerator from the place on Clinton Street. The next time I need a refrigerator, I'll go there, and I'll get an old-fashioned one. Not one I have to defrost. I'm not that old-fashioned.
Yeah.
But something that's not going to pay attention to what I'm doing in the kitchen.
I mean, you
How
don't
about
want it to
one of the ones from the
automatically order
20s?
from Amazon?
One from the 20s. That's an
They
icebox.
used to run on natural gas. They had ones that ran on natural
Oh, did they?
gas.
Because
Yeah.
my mom had an icebox up until I was born in the 50s.
Did that run on natural gas?
No, it ran out of ice cube.
Oh, you just put the cube above?
Dr. Ray.
A big block of ice, and they'd put it inside, and then they'd put the other stuff either in the, I don't know if it was the bottom or the top. It was one of those.
Yeah, you
My
can see
mother had a
those-
wringer washer until
was
the
the top, yeah.
1970s.
A crank one?
The kind that you put the clothes through the wringer,
Okay.
and you feed them through, and then it comes.
Wasn't
Pub was in
Great.
the bottom, and then you had to put them through the ringer to take the water out.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, my mother had that too.
yeah. My stepfather bought her.
I was fascinated by watching clothes go through the wringer too. As a little boy.
My mother had a really, I don't even know if I should say it. She had this saying that she used to say, having to do with wringer washers.
Yeah.
I don't know where she got it from, but it was so vile. But she would say it anyway. She'd say, "I haven't laughed so hard since Grandma got her tit caught in the wringer." It's like, this is what I grew up with. I had no chance in life, nothing. You've got a very sick look on your face, Ness. I'm sorry. And, if I
Somebody has some empathy.
I know. My mother had none. She was bad. She'd laugh at people that fell. She was pretty.
What's Mr. Ferrello trying to tell us about the Japanese?
The Japanese have a lot of animal devoted. I
To
think
gay you men.
I think it was autocorrect. He was
Sure.
It's terrible.
Meaning what? The Japanese have gay animal symbols?
No, I think that means that they have a lot of
Anime.
Anime.
Oh.
Yes,
Devoted
gay
to
anime.
okay, anime. Yeah, thank you, John, for yeah. Oh, yeah. Nessa figured it out. Katie lied. Lou Mang said Katie lied. That's not a lie. He was tricked by her. She was nasty. She was a wanton woman. Katie lied.
It's not a flattering song
Katie
about her.
lied. I was halfway hypnotized.
Mm.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's not a love song. But all right. So, what have you been up to? Last time you were with us, you were on the road, and you probably were someplace warmer than it is here.
Definitely. Well, all I can say is, interestingly enough, one of my clients was working for the company you were discussing and found out on the news while we were working that they no longer had a job.
Dunlop tire.
So the funny reaction was,
How am I
wow.
going to pay for this?
Strangely enough, the reaction was, I guess I now have the time to do this. We'll have to figure
boy.
out about the money.
Yeah, that was a shitty way to let those people go. I mean, there should have been something. I mean, I hope they got some kind of severance package or something.
Supposedly, the union went and negotiated with the company,
Mm-hmm.
and then the union said, "We have negotiated a severance package." I don't know how good it was, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because a lot of those people have been working there for a long time. They're older people. They're going to be harder to find jobs.
Hmm. Yeah, for weeks, the news would just interview people and say to them, "What are you going to do now?" It was a popular story on all the local channels.
Yeah. Yeah, that is and I there's no loyalty if it's not if you're not in your own country. It's just the profit margin. There's no loyalty to the people. It's just not it's not even a consideration. I know life isn't fair, but it seems like it's getting less fair.
Mm.
Let's see, that's a cultural thing. If you go back to like the 60s and 70s, football players had their entire career with one team. And then they do all this stuff to change how the game works. And if you win a Super Bowl, the first thing that happens is half your players get picked up by other teams.
Mhm.
So you don't even have a personality for your teams anymore because you don't have a group of people working together long enough to have any kind of cohesive identity.
Mm.
Sort of did, I think, recently with for a while with the Boston Patriots
Mm-hmm.
winning all those recent Super Bowls, and it was pretty
Yeah,
much
but-
the same people
But then they
for
let
a long
go.
time.
They let go of their quarterback. I
Yeah.
mean, that was
Up until then, yeah.
that was crazy.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, we finally found out the answer to that question. He left and took a team that nobody thought would win a Super Bowl and won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, that did say a lot about his ability.
As a team leader. Yeah, definitely.
One of my favorite things of that nature was people were agitating for Peyton Manning to get the NFL's MVP during the season that he was injured.
Mm-hmm.
And people were like, what do you mean? How can he get the MVP? He's not playing. And people said, but he's certainly proved that he's the MVP because the Colts with Manning went to the Super Bowl. The Colts without Manning can't win a game.
Proof by negativity.
Now that's a interesting way of looking at it. Yeah, definitely. Richard, do you have anything on your list?
I do.
Okay, let's hear what else is new.
Mick left a comment about me being a terrorist.
What?
See, right at the top?
Yeah, I see that.
You want to hear the backstory behind that?
I would like to hear that.
54 years ago in the neighborhood here, I met a fellow named Teddy Jurkevich.
Okay. Okay.
And I was so struck by what an unusual personality he had. Unlike anyone I had ever met before. He has a longing, you could say, or you could say he has this quality where there's something about him that loves being dramatic. It's just like part of his nature. And I've noticed this in him over the decades. And usually the things that he would have this great passion for would be sports. But it could be other things as well. Maybe he might like a comedian. But when he would talk to you, he would put so much emphasis on how much he liked it that I was always rapt with attention. So, 3 years ago, he discontinued our friendship because 3 years ago he started watching Fox News, and his new passion was the right-wing view of reality. So he became passionate about that. And whenever he would write to me about the thing he was passionate about, immigrants are ruining the country, gay people or trans people are ruining the country, I would write back and I would give him my opinion, and he couldn't handle the fact that I disagreed with him. So he just stopped writing to me. So what happened Friday? I'm in the produce department at Tops. Next to the produce department, on one side is all the aisles with the food that regular people eat. And then there's the deli. You know, you go to get your bologna and et cetera, et cetera. It's a nice wide open space in that area there. Unlike all the aisles, you know, you're more cramped in. This is like really nice and wide open. And I'm picking out some pears, and I look over and there's somebody staring at me. I mean, staring like trying to burn a hole in me. It's Teddy. And he doesn't say anything. He's just staring at me. And I said, "This is fantastic, Teddy. It's so good to see you." And he goes, "This was like a scene from the Old West." He was even in the position of standing like he was a gunfighter.
This town ain't big enough for the both of us.
And he said, "You blocked me." He said he's got this nice booming voice, like he is in the theater.
Yeah.
And I said, "No," I said, "I've never blocked anybody." And he goes, "You blocked me." And I said, I think I know what your problem is. I said, when I stopped using Adelphia Cable, they always gave you a free email.
Yeah.
And then I used it for many years, and then I switched to another provider, and Adelphia said, "We're shutting off your email. Get a new email." So he was still using the old one.
Oh, yeah. And they were being returned.
Well, then he started telling me his political views in this very like Shakespearean monologue way with his booming voice in this area of Tops. And he started talking about how evil the Democrats are.
Baby eaters, yeah.
And it was just incredible that he would stand there in the supermarket and he would say, "The Democrats are ruining this country." It's like he was giving a speech to all the shoppers.
Do you think his mental health is, like, deteriorated?
But this is the thing. I thought of that too, right? He's so compelling. You can't tell if he's crazy or if he's like an actor hired by the supermarket to come and give a speech.
Oh, that I doubt. But I mean,
Like, is he part of a touring group that is coming here to sell tickets for their production?
it sounds like, I mean, he could be passionate about what he's saying. And the thing is, he's been obviously trying to email you to tell you all these things. And,
Yes.
and his emails were being returned. So all this stuff is fresh in his mind. And he's saying, I'm going to say to him now what I've been trying to tell him.
that's a very good point you're making, because I said to him, how's your health been? And it didn't register.
Yeah.
And then I realized what you just said. He's probably been rehearsing this thing, and he doesn't want me to interrupt him. So he's talking about, he's in this monologue. Other shoppers, I'm sure behind me, are watching, or they're like, I got to get out of this produce section. This is a crazy person.
This is the worst produce section
A
I've ever.
shopper goes up to him to like engage him in a friendly way, you know?
Yeah.
Well, you know, sir, this is America, and we all have our different views on things.
Obviously a Democrat.
And he also ignores this other shopper, and he continues on, and he goes, and he points at me, this man is a terrorist.
Oh my God.
Isn't that wild? Now, Mick was with me, and Mick is like looking at this guy. Mick is trying to like burn a hole with him in his eyes.
Well, Mick's a little, I mean, if I were, what's his name, your friend that you ran into?
Teddy.
I would be a little leery. Mick looks,
He is imposing.
he's an imposing character.
He is.
Yeah. I think that he would, very manly, you know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been yelling at you if you had your bodyguard with you like that.
Now, the reason I think he had this whole speech rehearsed is the way he ended it. He ended it with, and I will never vote for another Democrat as long as I live. And then he said, that's my take, I'm out. And he left. Isn't that interesting? It's like he was calling a radio talk show, and he was giving his speech, and you have to signal when you're finished.
So you have to imagine that he knows you shop at Tops.
Yeah.
And he is going to run into you eventually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think you might be right. I think he might have been rehearsing for the day that he ran into you, which was the other day.
Yeah, it was quite shocking, and I was actually quite happy about it, because if he's engaging me that way, then he values me as at least as an audience person, right?
Right. Well, he wants to get his point across. I don't know if he values your opinion. Certainly not.
Which is
Yeah.
why when I got back, I immediately emailed him. I said, you know, just to reiterate, it's against my principles to block anybody. And I told him once again in writing the story. And then I said, you know, you're a bit like a Southern fire and brimstone preacher.
Yeah.
I said, I never thought of that before. But then this morning I was laying in bed and I was thinking over the decades, I've seen him do this before, and he does that same grandiose way of expressing himself. And so I wrote to him, and then he wrote back to me.
Oh.
Now, I gave him, when I wrote back to him again, I said, we have to have some kind of strategy on how to get along.
Yeah.
So I said, here's what I recommend. Go ahead and write to me with your right-wing views. And if you want to hear my response, I'll say to you, are you interested in hearing my response? And then if you say yes, I'll give it to you. If you say no, I won't. I'll just have read what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he did not respond to that, which I think means he acquiesces to it.
Or he's thinking about it. He's thinking, what if he doesn't get to tell me what his views are? What's in it for him?
Good point.
You know, because I mean, it sounds like it's a one-upmanship.
Now, I use that strategy with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, do you want to hear my thoughts on this? See, are you interested in what I have to say?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I would mention that to James had a usual comeback. I'm always interested. You never have to ask me this ever again.
And it really pisses me off that you make me go through the extra step of saying, yeah, I still care about what you want to say, and you're making me waste my frickin' time saying, go on and tell me.
See, so that's his justification.
Thank you for that, James.
I don't promise you that I'll agree with you, but I do want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You're not insisting that people agree with you. I mean,
Right.
but some people don't like to hear the opposite viewpoint. They don't want to know what
Yeah.
you think.
Yeah.
You know, and that's they live in a bubble. You know, they live in the Fox bubble.
My
Right.
first wife used to complain to me that I would listen to the Rush Limbaugh show when I was driving along in the car. And she'd say, "You don't agree with him, do you?" I'm like, "No." "Well, why are you listening to the show?" Because I have to understand why people who think that way think that way.
Yeah.
Because if I don't understand that, then how can I even defend my own beliefs?
Greg listens to the right wing. Well, he was when we were watching the news. He would listen to both, and I never objected to him doing it, but I always wondered because he'd listen. He has a little, like, you know, from 1970s. It's not a transistor radio, but it's a little radio that he carries around with him, and he would listen to, you know, some right wing thing on the way home, and I'd think, I wonder what people are thinking. Of him listening, you know, and they probably think he's a right winger, but it doesn't make any difference. It was just a thought that would occur to me, like, but he always did that because he wanted, like you said, he wanted to know what the other side was saying, and he wanted to hear. And I have a very, very low tolerance for it, though, because sometimes it just gets so ridiculous. It's just like listening to like when I'm going home at night from this, I'll put Scan on my radio, and sometimes there'll be some religious thing, you know, and I'll stop on that, and there's so much misinformation, you know, just misquotes of Bible verses and or misrepresentations of what it means, and it just drives me crazy sometimes. It's like all these people are listening to you because there's, you know, they need something. They need something, and you're giving them bullshit and you're taking their money. It aggravates me.
Now, on this subject of hearing both sides, Vanessa, did you notice that I asked you if you knew anything about Matt Dillahunty? Okay.
I don't.
Okay, so one of Matt Dillahunty's interests in life is defending the trans rights,
Yeah.
sticking up for trans people.
Yeah.
So now this I thought was very interesting. Now Matt Dillahunty is like a scholar in, you could say, theism versus atheism. But he's also developed this very intricate way of thinking and being logical. So now he's applying that to the trans rights subject. Now tell me what you think about this. The Freedom from Religion Foundation has a website. And they posted an essay on the website about the importance of acknowledging the rights of trans people. They have a board of directors. A member of the board of directors said, "Oh, I read what you posted on the website. Can I post my counter argument?" And this is a very prestigious person. He has the name doctor, so he has a PhD, or he is a literal doctor.
Yeah.
And he posted this essay where he said, suppose somebody said, "I am fat." And you looked at them and you said, "You're right within the guidelines, you know, you're not fat." "I am fat," they say. He said, shouldn't there be a standard as to what you say about yourself coheres with what the...
That's a very
That is subjective.
it's a poor argument. It's a poor argument for gender dysmorphia. You can, yes, yeah. I have noticed in myself that when I'm thin and I look in the mirror, I feel fat, and when I'm fat, I look in the mirror and I feel thin. I've noticed that. but the thing is, it has nothing to do with the way I feel as a person inside. I mean, it does. I messed up, but that's a different kind. That's something different than knowing your genuine gender to be opposite of what your body says.
So the entire community that follows the freedom of religion group were in an uproar. Why would you allow this board member to post this anti-trans argument? So the Freedom from Religion Foundation said, well, all right, let's be clear. We don't agree with his views, but we thought it would generate discussion.
Mm-hmm.
The community was not happy with that. And that was what Matt Dillahunty said in his video essay. He gave the argument saying, that is the kind of thing that you don't put on your website, which is kind of odd that he would say that. What do you think about that? Don't you think that this board member had a right to post an essay saying, I think differently?
Was there something that said this is not the opinion?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they put that in there. And,
Yeah,
and the group,
I think
and,
that he
and the
should be
majority
allowed
of
to.
people who follow the group said, oh, that's just a boilerplate, it's not necessarily the views of this organization, You got to take a more firmer stand for trans rights. If you truly are right for the rights of trans people, don't let this kind of thought on your website. So, you know what the Freedom Foundation did? They removed the essay.
Mm-hmm.
That board member quit. Richard Dawkins quit. Steven Pinker from Harvard quit. All quit this organization.
I'd be curious to know what Vanessa thinks about this.
Yeah, that's why I sent it.
Well, it's so mainstream that's their public enemy number one. Whereas after 9/11, Muslims were public enemy number one. Somehow it shifted off onto trans people. They're less than 1% of the population, and it's a big boogeyman. It's sort of like how you always have to have a villain, like in 1984. You always have to have some sort of villain, and they chose trans people currently as the current villain.
But don't you?
But if you were on the board, would you say, all right, let's remove the offending essay?
Well, yes, because it's so prevalent right now. Like it's getting so mainstream, just as Nazism itself and fascism are becoming super mainstream. It would be like telling the Southern Poverty Law Center that they have to let some guy quote Mein Kampf on their page for freedom of speech. Why would you do that?
Good analogy.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
I like that. The thing is, it makes me wonder sometimes about who's really responsible for these huge unbalanced or making us feel like there's such a big divide. I mean, I'm convinced more and more that it's people like, for instance, in Brazil. Oh, okay. In Brazil, they have the Mardi Gras, and the reason they have the Mardi Gras is to keep the poor people busy all year, so that they've got something to do.
It's smoke screens
Right,
for
smokes.
the oligarchs.
Yes, that's exactly.
Keep
Thank
them
you.
safe.
Thank you for using
It has
those
to be
good words.
right
'cause-
versus left instead of top versus bottom. It should
Yeah.
be really a class warfare thing, but they turn it into
that was
this
perfect.
fabricated culture war thing
Yes.
to protect their own interests.
Thank you for
That's
saying
why
it that way,
exists.
because I would have been dancing all around that, and I wouldn't have had the right words. Thank you for clarifying it. It's perfect.
And this is an interesting thing about the Mardi Gras. When you see the pictures on the news, you see them coming down the street, and then you see crowds of people on both sides. To be in that crowd, the ticket is $10,000
Is this like in New Orleans, or is that in Brazil?
in Rio de Janeiro.
I think it's called Carnival. But anyway, but I did not know that, but I do know that they fabricated that whole thing in order to keep the poor people busy, so they can win with their float one time in a year, and we're getting down to seconds now, but. Thank you, everybody, for participating. It was good to see you, James, live and in person. And thanks, Tom, for coming all the way over here to engineer And thank you, Lou and John and whoever, and Mick, whoever else is watching. I really appreciate it. And I want everybody to have a great new year. It's a new, fresh year, fresh start. Every year we get a fresh start. And by the end of the year, it starts going rotten. But Happy New Year.
I want my